Welcome to Pursuing Polaris, your official podcast for the NorthStar SailGP Team. I'm your host, Tom Ramshaw, and today we have a very special guest, my boss, CEO of the team, Phil Kennard. How are you doing today?
Good, thank you. It's early, but yeah, good.
A little jet lag still?
No, because I followed all of the advice that we gave out last week, so I'm not jet lagged at all. Yeah,
health and wellness, jet lag management is a big part of it. So
absolutely,
you're on it, eh?
Yeah.
So here at the podcast, we're just trying to get to know everyone within the team. You're the first person I've interviewed who's not a sailor on the team, so I'm sure you're going to have a lot of interesting new things to add that fans will love to learn about. But first, let's just start to get to know a bit about who you are and how you ended up the head of the SailGP team.
Yeah. Convoluted route, I suppose. I don't think anybody's route to where they get to is straightforward, but if you like, my story started.
Yeah, like you are a sailor,
I am.
So you can start with you being a sailor and where that led you and how you got into, more of the corporate side of sports. So let's hear it.
Yeah. So I guess starts probably late teenage years as somebody who loved sailing and found it was a bit of a way to get out from under your parents. I think that's probably the way that a lot of kids see sailing, and it's a bit of freedom, isn't it?
Yeah.
And ended up being reasonably good at it. Not to the level of like you or anybody else on the team, but I was enjoying it and being reasonably good at it. And then somebody showed me a 49er.
Yeah.
And I was like, that is awesome. I want to go and sail on one of those. And ended up starting to crew a 49er. Took a year out between school and university and basically just went sailing the entire time. So when I did, started doing Olympic grade regattas around Europe.
Nice.
And qualified for the British Olympic Development Squad, which was awesome. And then throughout university, I just did more and more of that and less work at uni, until a point, I think it was 2005, where I'd done sort of the trials for 2004 against Chris Draper, who obviously went to the games and ended up sailing on the Canadian team a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And I was a training partner to Chris. In
Nice.
the games.
So you're the to credit for his medal winning performance because he had the best training partner.
No, well, there was a whole group of teams from the UK at that time who were really, really good, and I think that kind of spurred the whole group onwards. So
of course,
like Stevie Morrison, who obviously is now commentating on SailGP, was very, very definitely at the top of that group as well, and went on to the next couple of games as well. So, but I loved doing that, and that was great. And in 2005, I went to the World Championships, which was a bizarre one. It was in Moscow on a river, which was the most weird place for a sailing championship ever.
Yeah.
And I injured my back at that event. And I had a kind of come to Jesus moment where I thought, am I actually going to be able to beat Chris and Stevie and all these other people? Because there was just so many of them. And I thought, you know what, I've injured myself. My helmsman had got a place at Cambridge to read medicine at that point, so he was I would have had to start from scratch again, and I decided I'm going to take a break. Decided to go and get a job, proper job. Failed at that because getting a proper job sounded pretty boring.
Yeah, it's pretty hard transition after doing sailing campaign to suddenly. Well, I haven't done it.
Well, you've done a pretty good job of coming out of Olympic sailing and finding something else. But you're right, it is hard. And I was really lucky to, throughout my 49er sailing, to get some sponsors and to finance that. And so I was starting to understand how the commercial side of sport worked in a very, very small way. And from that, I was introduced to the then head of marketing for the Williams F1 team, because my younger brother is a racing driver. He's been an F1 test driver. He went to Le Mans, and so he's in that world.
Yeah.
And through those connections,
cool.
through those connections, I got an introduction to Williams F1, and basically the guy said, "Would you like a job?" So straight out of sailing, I went into F1 and started 10 years of traveling to all the Formula One races. And
what was your position within the Williams team?
To start with, it was as a sponsorship manager. So just looking after the current sponsors and managing their driver appearances and their branding and their events and stuff like that. But kind of quickly I moved into the sales side of it and then continued in that.
Cool. And I know you were, so after you were done at Williams, was that straight back into sailing? Because I know you were involved in America's Cup World for a bit.
Not quite. I did 5 years, 5 years I think it was, at Williams. And it basically any job that was going at Williams, I'd put my hand up for it. So I ended up being Nico Rosberg's pitboard guy. So I would hang the pitboard out the side of the races and just doing, random stuff just to get hands on as much stuff as possible. But I then ended up being offered a job at the Lotus F1 team, which is now Alpine. So I spent another 4 years there as well before a gentleman called Sir Keith Mills called me up and said, hey, we're starting an America's Cup team with Ben Ainsley and they need some people. Would you be interested? And I was like, well, this is fantastic because this is combining my love of sailing with kind of F1 style design race basically, and what I understand from that side of things. And went and joined Ben and did the 2013 to 2017 America's Cup.
So you spent a bunch of time in Bermuda with all these guys that are now in this league?
Not as much as they did.
Or you were traveling around doing the sponsorship and stuff.
I was lucky that I didn't have to spend quite so much time on the rock. Yeah. But no, it was a fantastic cup, and Bermuda is a place that's really close to my heart now because I love that place.
It's amazing.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Nice. And then so after that, you got into another sport, I understand.
Yeah, that's right.
Before you got here, so what was that?
So basically, at the end of the 2017 Cup, I sat down with Ben and Joe Grindley, and they offered me the opportunity to continue on for the next Cup with the team. But I think we knew at that point that it was likely to be in New Zealand. And from a commercial point of view, the honest truth is that New Zealand is a very challenging market to sell sponsorship for, just because of the time zone change and
it's very far away.
It's very far away.
Amazing place.
Yeah,
very far to get to from anywhere.
It is, and I've just felt that for me personally and my personal growth, that staying with that team was probably not the right thing to do at that point, because I just couldn't see how, where the growth was going to come, and ultimately, of course, Ben ended up doing the deal with Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos to fund the whole program, precisely because it was so hard to raise the money needed for a full America's Cup campaign in New Zealand. So at the same time as that was going on, I'd been offered a role to start the PGA Tour office in Europe, and work very closely with PGA Tour headquarters in the States in the world of golf. And I just thought, hang on, this is an amazing opportunity to get into North American sport and to understand a bit more about how that world works. And so I jumped in with that, and I never thought I'd be there for 7 years. It was one of those things where I thought I'd do a couple of years.
So were you a golf fan before that, or amateur golfer, or any of that?
A terrible golfer.
Yeah.
There was a running joke at the tour that I was probably the worst golfer at the tour. But so don't ever challenge me to go and play a game.
Okay. It's not in my top 5 sports to play. So, so I guess you went straight from that into SailGP. So let's get to SailGP a bit here. Tell me about meeting Greg and our owner and what that whole transition and getting into the league was like. And
So I think that story comes, probably early part of last year, where I felt like I'd reached the end of my road with the PGA Tour, and I was going to start looking for other opportunities. And pure coincidence, I was introduced via a mutual acquaintance to Greg, because he was looking at the time to invest in various sports, and actually the first sport he wanted to invest in was Formula One, and he wanted to take a stake in an F1 team. And a friend of mine and Greg's who put us in contact said, hey, look, about F1, and you've been in F1 for 10 years, all the players in F1. Maybe you can just meet Greg for a drink and have a chat. And that drink was ended up being sort of not more than 5 minutes. It was like 2 hours or so, and at the end of it, we had a plan to put together a business to start investing in sport. So that was where it started in looking at F1, and we actually did go a reasonable way down the path of doing due diligence on various different investments in F1. So there were some discussions with, I think, 3 or 4 different teams, but the valuations of Formula One teams now are sky high. And so no matter how much money Greg would have invested, he would have got a very, very small piece of the pie. And I think he's the kind of person that just wants to be a bit more active and be a bit more involved in his investments. And so he kind of said, well, I'm not sure about this. And at the same time, and the German SailGP team, through a fund that Greg has invested in, had approached him to buy a piece of the German team. So Thomas Riedel and Greg and I had a discussion about an investment with the German team, and Greg came to me afterwards and said, look, I really like this SailGP thing. I think it's on a, excuse the pun, but a kind of a crest of a wave, and I think it's a good opportunity and a good time. What do you think? And I said, well, yeah, I do, but I'm not sure that taking a minority stake in the German team achieves the ambition that you want to be, front and center, and to be involved in actually running the team, and to be in control effectively. Of
course, yeah.
So if you're interested in SailGP, why don't we go and have a chat to the league and see just what other opportunities are out there? And so we did that, and kind of the rest is history.
Yeah, I suppose there were only a few teams for sale. One was the Canadian team, and Greg's from Toronto, so it fit fairly nicely into...
Although SailGP didn't know that he was from Toronto.
So they were presenting the other team.
Oh, there was Spain first, and then there was France, and then finally it was Canada. And I kind of had a sly smile when they said Canada. I was like, I think that might be the one.
So to you and Greg, the Canadian team was the most exciting?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
It still is.
Nice, of course. So you obviously the process takes a while, and we finished the season. As a sailor on the team, we were a bit uncertain with the future. I know a lot of speculation online was that the Canadian team was gone. There was no news coming out, but you were hard at work behind the scenes, getting it together.
Yeah.
What was that experience like?
Full on. If I'm honest, there was a period over the last summer where I think I was doing like 18-hour days doing the due diligence and the negotiations with the league, and just setting up a company from scratch, which actually isn't the easiest thing to do when you've got time pressure on you to do it. So setting up holding companies, setting up the company that was going to contract with SailGP to own and to run the team, and all the tax implications behind that, and all that kind of stuff. It was a long process, but at the same time actually trying to work out whether this was something that Greg should do as well, whether it was a sensible investment to make.
Yeah, so as you're doing it, you're still trying to confirm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I had heard behind the scenes stuff that, the team's going to get bought, it's going to get bought, but we'd heard that before as a team, and then it didn't happen. Yeah. So it was, until it's done, it's not done. So it was a bit...
One of the things that I really like about Greg is that he has always been very very upfront with me about whether he thinks something was going to work or not, and he was really committed to SailGP from the off. And we kind of went through the process of saying, was it a good deal, and are we getting the right things from the league, and all this kind of stuff. But ultimately, I think he was pretty convinced from the day one that he wanted to get his hands on the team. So yeah, it's
a pretty cool product with a lot of potential. So as a owner, there's a lot of room for growth, and I think it's pretty exciting thing to be a part of.
Oh, it's super exciting. I don't actually think that there are many other sporting kind of franchise or team ownership opportunities in global sport right now that are as exciting as SailGP. And I'm not just saying that because I'm sitting where I'm sitting, but we've done a lot of due diligence on a number of different sports. We looked at equestrian, which is still quite interesting, but equestrian, we looked at a rugby investment. We've looked at obviously Formula One, but none of them had the same mixture of ingredients, if you like, that SailGP has.
Brought a lot of excitement. So when you guys got the team, none of us sailors were technically attached to it.
No.
So it was a bit of an awkward situation, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
So you had to sign all the sailors, and I guess what some of the fans might be wondering is there was a big crew change with the driver, and what happened there, and was that you and Greg putting your stamp of this is our team now, or how did that process go down?
Yeah, just to kind of set the scene on that, you're absolutely right. When we closed the transaction to buy the team at the end of August, there was not a single person who was contracted to the team, which was a hell of a risk for us to take. Because,
yeah, of course.
With the nationality rule, as it was, and it's subsequently slightly been tweaked, but as any one of the core team, you included, could have gone and signed for another team. You didn't have to sail, and you still don't have to sail for the Canadian team. You can go and sail for another team. And so for us, it was really important that the core of the team that allowed us to meet the nationality rule were contracted as soon as possible, and we didn't want to just buy an empty box of a team. Open the lid on day one, and there was nothing inside. So I think it was one of the most important things was to look at the Canadian talent out there and to make sure that was locked down, which of course we did as soon as we possibly could. And you and I and the rest of the sailors had long discussions about continuing with the team and contracting and all that kind of stuff. So we did that. And then in terms of the driver change, I think there were a number of factors there that were at play. Take nothing away from Phil, and he's an absolutely fantastic sailor, and he's got great pedigree and an amazing history in SailGP and sailing F50s. But I think Greg, as a very proud Canadian, buying the Canadian team, he felt that he didn't want to be the only team on the start line without somebody at least holding a Canadian passport on the wheel, and that would really detract from the commercial opportunities that the team could have going forwards. So finding a Canadian who can sail an F50 is not an easy task.
Yeah, it's a small sailing scene we're in, but also again the potential to grow.
Yeah, exactly, and there is potential to grow, and we can come on to weekend foil and the Canadian sort of pathway into this team, which is very exciting. But for us, when we discovered that Giles was available as somebody who grew up in Canada, who is a Canadian national, who has 2 Olympic gold medals, and he's one of those generational talents, it was a pretty straightforward decision to say, well, actually, I think this is the path that we want to follow. So history will judge whether we've made the right decision, but I think we did.
Yeah, well, it's been exciting to be a part of, and it's definitely a bit different, but I've sailed with Giles, and he's definitely a very good sailor, so it's pretty exciting.
Yeah. Well, you sailed against him in the Finland, doesn't he?
Yeah, I sailed against him. I think we did maybe 1 or 2 training camps where we were sparring a bit, but he was tough to beat. Yeah. I don't know if I ever beat him in a regatta, but when you're just winning straight regattas, well, I think it's a little bit tough.
Didn't he win every regatta from 2013 to 16 or something?
Yeah, I think he did.
Unbelievable. So,
I think he lost. He came second in one because he missed a bunch of races because of something broken, but that was about it. And I wasn't the guy winning that regatta, so I was a little bit back, still beginning in my Finn career at that time. Anyway, so how do you see the team growing, and what are some of the things behind the scenes that you're looking at, and what's a successful team this season for you?
So I think there's kind of 3 things about the team that excite me, and Greg and I kind of agreed on these before we bought the team, and because he said to me, look, I'm not going to do it. He was very kind, but he said, I'm not going to do it unless I come on board to run it. And I said, well, that's great, Greg, but I'm not going to do it unless you are committed to performance, because I'm a competitive person. I don't want us to be just out there for making up the numbers and hold on to the team for a couple of years and then flip it and don't really care about the results.
Yeah, of course.
I said, we want to set this up to win and to be on the podium and to be as competitive as possible. And he agreed with me and said, no, this is we're going to do this properly. We're going to put the right budget behind, everything that we need in order to be as performant as possible.
Yeah.
For me, the exciting thing is around performance, and we're doing a lot of things now in terms of getting a performance analyst involved with the team as well. Hiring Joe Glanfield as our lead coach, which is super exciting, getting him back in again. And then just investing in the training time that we can get hold of. So we're doing every single training session that we can possibly do to get the time on the boat. So performance is kind of the key thing. And then from that, leaning on kind of my experience in terms of the America's Cup and Formula One and the Tour, in terms of the commercial side of the team. So trying to engage with the fan base, trying to build up a merchandise range, which is coming. Is coming soon.
Yeah, nice.
It takes a long time to get merchandise
the
made.
Canadian fans will like that.
Yeah, it's super cool as well. So I think the first product is some caps, which are a step on from the team ones that we've got as well, nice. Which is quite exciting. And then it's the sponsor side of things really. So looking to engage with Canadian businesses as well as international businesses as well. And I'm bringing along for the journey with the team.
Nice. And then what about obviously we're all disappointed that there's no Canadian event this season, but looking very promising for 2026 season be 6, I suppose. Can you tell us more about that? And
I mean, I share your frustration at not having a Canadian event this year, because I think the Halifax event was that was going on right when we were in the middle of the due diligence process to buy the team, and to see the strength of feeling and passion from the Canadian fans was a key driver in Greg's decision to buy the team. It was amazing to see the engagement of the fans in Halifax, and people on tops of car parks and rooftops to try and get a glimpse of it. It's pretty cool. So
rainy day, and you couldn't find a space on the shore to watch.
I know, and also stuff like the merchandise sold out on Saturday morning. I mean, firstly, that's a disaster from a commercial point of view. You need to have more merchandise, but and you learn about that. But just the level of interest from Canadian fans, I think, is pretty cool, and that actually is. I mean, you may correct me if I'm wrong here, but is this team the only Canadian team, international Canadian team, kind of competing worldwide week in, week out? I don't know, but somebody told me that, so I think we need to fact check.
In sailing, or
no, just in general, in any sport.
Oh, I'm not sure.
It's got to be up there though. So so I think that obviously a Canadian event forms a core part of the proposition of owning a team, and we actually when we found out that there wasn't going to be a Canadian event this year, that almost derailed the process of buying the team. And we only got it back on track by getting a commitment to come back to Canada in 2026, which is why when we announced the acquisition of the team, we were able to announce at the same time that we were coming back to Canada. Now, where we go in Canada in 2026 is still up for discussion, but we've got a couple of venues that are really pushing, and obviously one is to go back to Halifax, which was such a fantastic event last time out as well.
Yeah, I've heard rumors of some other cities, but I'm not sure I'm allowed to say much.
No, we can't say yet, I don't think.
Well, there's only so many cities big enough in Canada, so it's not hard to piece some ideas together.
I think wherever we end up going, it'll be a great event. It really will be.
For sure.
I'd love to see us go back to Halifax and to do another event there. I think that would be great. But there are other places like Toronto, for example, I think would be an amazing venue. Vancouver as well would be interesting to sail out. So there's plenty of options.
Yeah. Well, I'm from Toronto, so I'm a bit biased, and it would be pretty special to have an event there. They hosted the Pan Am Games in 2015, and I kind of choked on the qualification and didn't go. And I was like, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to have like a big international event in my hometown, and I didn't get to do it. So I'm
we'll,
like,
we'll have to correct that for you
years
then.
later, over a decade later, maybe one day I'll get the opportunity to compete on home waters in a big international
Well,
event.
we need to do that with the home advantage. Then you've probably got some.
Yeah, well, me and Billy both grew up sailing there, so yeah, it's our venue,
Local
one of
knowledge.
our venues. Yeah, I mean it's pretty scattered and tricky, but it's a cool little harbor, and will fit a SailGP course perfectly.
Yeah. Oh, perfect. Good.
Yeah. So how do you see? What's your like long-term vision? You mentioned the weekend foil program. Right now, I think I'm the youngest person actively sailing on the team, and I'm 33 years old now. So what kind of development stuff have we got going?
Are you resigning? Is that it? You're...
No, I'm just saying we got a team in our mid and late 30s. So what kind, like a young Canadian sailor, listening to this, what kind of opportunities do we have, and how are we going to push the next generation into being the next SailGP Canada sailors?
Joking aside, you're absolutely right that we do have not the youngest team at the moment, and actually being able to showcase and to inspire, I suppose, the Canadian youth sailors and younger sailors to be able to come through to SailGP is a key part of what we want to do. And as there is a nationality rule in this sport, and we have to have at least 3 Canadian nationals on the boat at any one time. That's the rule. And so we would be not doing our jobs if we weren't trying to foster the next generation and get the very, very best Canadian talent through onto the team. Now, how we do that is a tricky thing, because, as you know, sailing one of these things is pretty extreme, isn't it? They're not. You can't just jump out of a laser and go and sail one of these. And training time in an F50 is scant. There's very, very few opportunities you get to train. So you have to be a world-class sailor who can make that jump. And there are younger sailors from Canada. I mean, obviously Georgia, as part of our team at the moment, she's sailing 49er, and we're going to be looking at her in the future. But the weekend foil program is also going to be starting to produce some really good talent, and we're working with them as well to see whether we can get some of those people through into SailGP.
Yeah, well, I look forward to it. I would like to be back in Canada a little more in the summers and seeing that development grow. It's pretty exciting.
You can go and inspire some kids then and get them out on the water.
Yeah, I'll do my best. We'll see how it goes, but I'm excited to watch that development and growth. Back to SailGP specifically in the league, what would you like to see the league, how the league grows, and what are some important things from I know the CEOs all to get together for calls to help guide the direction of the league. So how's that going, and how do you see it going forward?
I think firstly, every CEO across the teams recognizes that this is an incredible league, an incredible sport, and that what Larry Ellison and Russell Coutts and the rest of the team have done in putting this together is nothing short of incredible. I mean, it to put 12 boats, as we've got this weekend, on the water at 13, 14 venues around the world is not a small undertaking, and they're doing it in a very professional way. They're growing fan base, they're growing the number of sponsors, they're growing the eyeballs on TV. It's all just trending in a really good direction now, but that obviously doesn't mean that there's nothing that can be done to improve. And every team is pushing the league constantly to make changes and to just keep things moving forwards. Good examples of that are obviously following the incident that we had in Auckland last week with Billy, and just making sure that the safety of the athletes on board is absolutely prime concern, and that we're doing whatever we can to make sure that you're as safe as possible when you sail one of these things. Because actually, when we were in Auckland, I was on the chase boat when the incident happened, and as we came up behind the F50, the waves at that point, it was pretty choppy, right?
Yeah.
And trying to get the medical boat alongside and trying to get Billy off and to get him checked and get him to hospital, etc. It was really tricky. And so there's some learnings from that the league have taken on board. There's, just design changes potentially to the boat to make sure that, that if you do have one of those big bow down movements, that there's not quite so much water that goes over the boat and hits the sailors and stuff like that. So we're pushing the league on that because I think it's, we don't ever want a situation where a sailor isn't sailing. So you need to be safe doing what you're doing. So that's the first area. And then, secondly, it's just constant evolution in terms of the product that SailGP is putting out there to fans, whether that's through the hospitality, which is improving every week, or it's the presentation of the teams when in the tech site that we have. And, from the Los Angeles event onwards, we've got a brand new tech site kind of build, which is kind of a F1 pit lane concept where all the teams are lined up in a very different way than they are at the moment, which is super exciting and looking forward to seeing that. So it's just constant evolution and changes that we're pushing, and then going to more events. And we're at 13 events this year. Will it go to 14 events when we add Canada next year? Yes, and then adding more and more and more events, going to more markets and opening up more places around the world that we take this.
So speaking of more events, from my perspective as just being a sailor on the circuit, it seems very tight with the shipping of everything. It's always a question people ask me when I'm talking about the league and my job. Is it possible to get more events around the world in a small amount of time with all the shipping and logistics? Or
it's a good question.
It seems like there's not a lot of days for sailing and a lot of days for moving the boats around. So
I think you're right. It is a challenge. Just getting, I think it's 82 containers of equipment for the whole circus. Getting that around the world is tricky. But I think DP World as the new smart logistics partner of the league are kind of helping them to make changes and shortcuts here and there. And it's small things like these new bases that we're going to have from Los Angeles onwards cut down the number of days of setup time. So if you cut down every setup of an event by a day, then that might mean over the course of the season you can put an extra event in somewhere. So it's these tiny little changes that the league are doing that will add up to just being able to put more events on this.
So right now we're at 14 events in 12 months. Maybe one day 20 events if they keep doing those improvements. And
that would take a big step change in logistics, which I know the league are working on at the moment. But I wouldn't write that off in the long term. That's a possibility. Yeah,
that would be very cool. So back to a bit about what you were saying about safety. I've mentioned this in podcasts before. One thing that I would push for as a sailor that would translate also to safety is getting more sailing time. For example, we always sail on the Friday before the events, but sometimes we might only sail for an hour and a half, 2 hours.
Yeah.
Have CEOs pushed for getting more sailing time? The boat gets craned in and sits on a mooring sometimes for 3-4 hours. Could we be potentially sailing during that time, training up more guys to have backups so we don't run into an issue like Auckland? Is that a discussion in the CEO calls?
Yes, it is. I feel like a broken record on this, but yes, we want to get more hours on the water. And when you've gone to the lengths that the league and the teams go to get all of the people in locations like here in Sydney, and the boat just sits on a mooring and isn't being sailed, I mean that hurts for me. Because that's money that we've spent to be here that we're not using. So yes, we are obviously pushing the league, but one of the key points for the league is that they want to maintain as fair as possible kind of time on the water between all the teams. It's one of the key parts of SailGP that all the boats are the same, the teams get the same amount of time training on the water. So if you can guarantee that every team is going to be able to get an extra hour, then we might be able to push for that. So, but it's got to be a way. There's got to be a way.
There's got to be a smart person behind the scenes who can figure out that logistic.
It's a serious point though, that going back to the idea of training up more people to backfill roles on the team, if if we have an issue like we had with Billy, we are constrained by a couple of things that maybe fans are not aware of in terms of having additional backup at every single event. One is that there's a budget cap in SailGP, so I can't just go out and hire a whole B team who will just come to every event just on the off chance that that we have an issue. Firstly, because they'd get bored and they wouldn't want to do it, but secondly, we'd go over our budget cap easily by doing that. So because everyone needs to be paid, so we wouldn't be able to do that. And then the second thing is that that we have a limit on the actual number of staff that we can bring to an event of 18. And so we can't just continue to bring more and more and more people again on the off chance that something happens. So everyone has to effectively become like a Swiss Army knife. So you could, like, for example, you have been doing some, wing trims and flight control, stuff like that, so that, we do have that resilience there if there's something happens to somebody on the boat. And we have, a more robust plan following the issue that we had in Auckland, for sure. Yeah,
that extra time on the water would help address that issue big time.
It would, yeah.
Well, cool. So just last question. What are you looking forward to most this season and beyond about the team and just the season in general?
I genuinely think that this team has every opportunity to be right at the sharp end of this fleet. I really do, and I wouldn't be here if I didn't think that was the case. And so I am disappointed with the results that we had in Dubai. We were in with a shout of being on the podium after the first day. We had a poor second day and didn't make it. We had a middling difficult event that we had in Auckland, but I do feel like this team is poised to break through, and I'm really excited to see through the season how the group of sailors that we've got come together, they gel, and that hopefully the results come. And I'm just really excited to see how we get on this year, to be honest with you. So
that makes two of us.
Yeah.
And probably the rest of the team. We're all pretty excited. Well, thanks a lot for coming on the podcast. I think
no problem. Thanks, Tom.
Great story and great to hear more behind the scenes stuff. So thanks a lot.
Let's go sailing.
Perfect.